isolation, multi-nations. I can't remember what that is, but it'll come to me in a minute. But basically, you're locking nation states into these very complex partnerships and arrangements. So the country doesn't operate on its own. It can only operate with the French, or it can only operate with NATO, or it can only operate with the European Union. And I think that we are now into this stage. And this, remember, this was put together in the 1970s, Big Brother. That's what appeared, and by an amazing coincidence, we had Big Brother popped up on TV. And I'm told by psychiatrists and psychologists that a lot of Big Brother, particularly when you're, not that I watch it at all, but if you're sat there watching people sleep, you're actually destroying your mind. It's designed to destroy your mind. And it's heading towards this crisis. And this is where you're talking about revolution. And the normalization, this doesn't mean that things go back to normal. If you put it in a communist, a Soviet, or a corporate fascist sense, normalization is when the state is fully in control. So this book for me, which I've mentioned before, this was the book when I was reading it with a cup of tea one day and I thought, my God, this is happening. And maybe it was a bit easier for me because this is military psychological warfare the guy's talking about. The rest of the book's very complex political analysis about the Germans and the Soviet Union. And I'll just say, if you believe that the Berlin Wall came down, it absolutely didn't. It absolutely didn't. The only thing that formed our opinion on that is what we saw in the mass media. The wall physically fell, but the doctrine and the politics that was behind that wall not only stayed behind the wall, it then migrated across. And maybe I need to do a presentation talking about that. But it was one of the days, other people had a real shock when 9/11 happened. I was just fascinated when the BBC told me one night, the Berlin Wall's come down, that's the end of communism. Well, the days leading up to it, I knew what I was looking at, which was all sorts of refurbishment of the Soviet military. And then after the walls come down, I'm looking at the same stuff. And this wasn't we were being fed junk, this was real. So somebody was lying, and of course it was the BBC. You won't be able to read this, but this is the 1985 version where there's a lot more detail. Media, monopolization of news and comment, manipulation of information and thought,